Hello.
Peace, Mr. Freeze. This is main one on the Super BB Show.
What's the deal?
Cool, man. We're so honored to have you on the show today.
I'm honored just to be honored. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's really nice. Very rare when I do things. I got to be honest, I researched you guys, and my boys in New York, they said, do the show. So I'm doing.
You are definitely one of our inspirations. I mean, just basically, that kind of b-boying that we love to see. We love the old school flavor, old school Rocksteady flavor. And we, the guys over here, we always loved watching, that old school bootleg Betty stuff.
That was Legs. Yeah, he put those out. Aren't those great?
those were really awesome. When did you start breaking?
I started in 1970. That's when I took my first steps as a b-boy.
Wow.
I remember like it was yesterday. We're just, doing some top rocking and up rocking. Wow. And all of a sudden, one brother just kind of like jumped up in the air and completely landed on his side. Went down on his side like with his hand on his head and posing like, And that was, for me, the beginning of when the whole dance started.
Wow.
And from there, somebody did another freeze. But, those freezes at the time were very, what's the right wording? Medieval.
Yeah,
in comparison to what went on in the late 70s, mid 80s, 90s, up until now.
Wow. And you said this was 1970?
Yeah.
Being that you were there around that time, when did people actually start doing like footwork and stuff like that? Do you remember?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I got to tell you because for some years, at 71, 71. Yeah, around that. Just around 71, we ended up moving and to another part of the Bronx, and I pretty much was out of the loop. Up until I was always dancing, but up until around, I don't know if it was 77, 78, I was dancing, and I was in a predominantly Irish white neighborhood at the time.
Yeah.
No longer, black and Latin.
Yeah.
And so I'm dancing, on the floor doing stuff. And I remember these, like it was yesterday, these group of guys, some white ones, some Latin ones.
Yeah.
They were prancing down the street in their shirts. I think it was called, what they call East Side Breakers.
Okay.
They lived on the west side, that's right. Anyway, so I remember them coming up to me, and one particular guy, his name was Mr. Ed. Now, Mr. Ed was with the group, the infamous group in the Bronx called the Seven Deadly Sins.
Okay.
Little Left was pretty much the champion b-boy of that crew and all over the Bronx. I just didn't know it yet.
Wow.
So the guy asked me if I rocked, and I said, yeah, I didn't know that we called it that. They called it that because, from 1970, 71 to 77, 78, I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but I did know that they wanted to battle.
Wow, nice.
So the guy says, all right, let's go. So everyone does a circle. We play the music, and bam, I do my little move, first. And, of course, he wanted to see what I had, and I didn't understand why he wanted me to go first, so I just went first. And all my Irish and white friends were like, go ahead, Mark, go ahead. And then Mr. Ed started doing it.
Yeah.
He did the 6-step, he did swipes, he did a neck move, and then he did a head spin.
Wow.
Which means he lit me on fire. So, when the brutal beating was over, I was so taken by, what he did. I was like, where did you learn this? Who taught you this?
Yeah,
I was going crazy because I couldn't believe what I saw.
Yeah.
So he told me Little Left taught him.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, can I meet Little Left? And I ended up meeting Little Left, and, we became real close. He taught me the fundamental basics of breaking. And over the years, I met Track 2, who created the tracks. I met a lot of brothers that were very important and had key influences in creating this dance.
Yes, yes.
And it's not until years later that I started thinking, wow, who actually created this and who created that and who did this? So, I did a lot of asking around and research and was lucky enough to find out who created all these things.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
It was pretty interesting. I mean, I can't say I created the fundamental basics to breaking, nor could I say that I invent breaking, even though I started doing it before the basics were created. But we were doing freezes and moving our feet from different places to do another freeze. So to me, as far as I'm concerned, we were breaking. It just wasn't as advanced.
Wow. That's dope. And
yeah.
being that this is this is the Super B Beat show, we really want to know when you started in '70, like what kind of music was playing when you were doing all these?
It was all James Brown stuff we were doing, Parliament Funkadelic.
Okay.
It was strictly old beats, of course.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And when you battled the guy, Ed, or was it Ed?
Ed, yeah.
Were they playing like Jimmy Castor and stuff like that? Or, I mean, was that?
It wasn't Jimmy Castor. I don't remember the exact songs. They did have a boom box with a tape in it.
Oh, nice, nice. That's fresh.
Wait a minute. You know what they were playing? They were playing the Fantastic Five. That's what it was.
Wow.
On the Fantastic Five, one of their routines.
That's
awesome.
That's cool, man.
Bastards. They set me up.
When did you get down with Rocksteady?
I met Legs in... Damn. I met JoJo and the guys before Legs came around. Shit, I met Rocksteady before they were Rocksteady.
Oh, okay.
They were Bronx Boys. They were called TBB, the Bronx Boys.
Yeah.
Then they branched out and did their own, Star Child Rock. Anyway, I don't know when I met Legs. 78, 79. It could be 80. I really, those dates slip my mind, to be quite honest.
Okay.
But his name was definitely out there.
Yeah.
Because all the old school b-boy stuff, you got to understand b-boying in the mid 70s, late 70s, early 80s was laughed at. Nobody did that in New York, and if they did, they were like, "Yo, can you come clean the floor over here?"
Wow, that's very.
Everyone started getting it all over the world, and in the West, 15, 20 years later than when it originally began. I love when people say, "Yo, we're old school."
Yeah.
What was it? I was in Holland. I was in Holland, and these guys were furious how they're not respected in Holland as old schoolers.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I was nice to them. I'm like, to be honest, you're not old schoolers at all. I mean, you may have danced first in Belgium, in Holland, but that doesn't put you on the map as anything of value to the culture. I mean, the reality of it is, as far as old school, when it has to do with hip hop, we're talking about the 70s. Period.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're born in the 80s and Far Side is old school for you. It's not old school. And just like with jazz, if I talk to a jazz musician, I can't tell them, I do old school. No, I don't do old school, because old school is back, when jazz started, quite some time before I was even born.
Yeah, exactly.
But the interesting thing is everybody's writing themselves into the history book. They all stand on a platform and say, I.
That seems to be a problem today also with a lot of the OGs, like trying to figure out who started what and when did they start. And it seems like we can't really get some factual knowledge here because there are a lot of people arguing and stuff.
Well, it depends what you're talking about. We're talking about OGs, poppers, and lockers from the West Coast. It's a business to them. It always has been, and they try to. Everybody's got a story. I'll give you if you talk to New Yorkers, old school New Yorkers, you talk to Track, to JoJo, they'll tell you, please could talk for me, because he knows our history. We could all sit in a room together and it'll all be on point. You put West Coast poppers and lockers, the ones that supposedly created what they created, boom, every story is different.
Wow.
I got some brother from the West Coast just months ago here in Vegas. He comes up to me. I forgot what his name is. I forgot what this guy's name was. He comes up to me. He goes, Mr. Freeze, so it's nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so. I invented pop locking. I said, what do you mean you invented pop locking? I mean, it was too loud, so I couldn't, put him in his place. I'm like, what do you mean you invented pop locking? You invented popping or locking?
Yeah.
It was both.
Exactly.
So I shook his hand. I'm like, nice to meet you. When I know that the lockers created locking, and we know popping where it started, and we know who came up with boogalooing. There's so many people that just are a bunch of. Am I allowed to say a little?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Freeze.
Bullshitters, and it's not because I'm a New Yorker and don't like the West Coasters, because I do. I have nothing against it. But the unfortunate thing is, everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
Even had what you would call it. One of the breakers in LA saying they invented breaking.
Yeah. You have crazy
kids,
people like that. Yeah.
The freshest kids, and this is my boy, Little Caesar, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Oh man, he was in the freshest kids being interviewed, and he goes, it's up to us, the OGs, to pass down the torch. I'm like, really, OGs? What the hell are you talking about?
Oh man, that's pretty funny. I mean, when I also, sometimes I keep up, and there are also like discrepancies in uprock, like where that came from. That's why I kind of like touched upon that, and whether it came from Brooklyn or the Bronx or whatever. So that's also what I've been hearing lately.
Well, there's a lot of research being done, but the bottom line is, there's top rocking, Bronx rocking, that we call it the same thing, and there's Brooklyn rocking.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is, top rocking, Bronx rocking is we're doing something to the opponent in different ways to put them down. Brooklyn rocking, they have a set standard, boom, pop, boom, boom, boom. When they stand up, they go down and they do something to each other. I personally don't know who created Brooklyn rocking, but we do know factually that style of fight dancing on top started in the Bronx in the late 60s. And somehow migrated itself towards Queens and Brooklyn after that.
Okay.
And honestly, I'll tell you the truth, who gives a shit where it started with top rocking? Because all it is, it's a battle on top. Thinking the reason why there's no arguing is because it is a foundation dance with its fundamental basics, where it's really considered a full-on dance.
Gotcha.
If you're a good dancer, anyone could do it.
Gotcha. Man, that's pretty
it is important. I understand. We want to know who the first top rockers is, but there's too many bullshitters right now to even believe them.
I believe you, Mr. Freeze.
There's a reason why their stories are being told from the past and why they are stuck through through our time, through 40 years. There's a reason. And then there's a reason why nobody can get anything straight, and there's people that are just arguing and trying to prove themselves.
For real.
Try to prove yourself, it's because you really didn't do anything. You don't need to prove yourself.